Good evening. We will now open the floor for input from the public on the 2026-2027 budget. Please be advised that the board has scheduled 30 minutes for tonight's input session. Individuals will be called to speak in the order in which they signed up. Once we reach the allotted time, the remaining individuals on the list will have the opportunity to speak during the public participation segment on tonight's regular board meeting. The regular board meeting will begin at 6:30 p.m. Please be reminded when your name is called, please come to the microphone and press the button. You'll be given 3 minutes to address the board. To assist with the timing, the lights on the table in front of me will change colors from green to yellow to red. When you have 30 seconds remaining, the light will turn yellow. When your time is up, the light will turn red, and you will hear an audible tone indicating your time to speak has expired. Okay? We don't currently have anybody, so we will wait. And should someone come, I guess I'll read that again. I did one too many, okay. This concludes our allotted time for public input on the 2025-2026 budget. Well, no one came out, but if you have thoughts, email them. We will now move on to the next agenda item, which is item 2.1, which is me calling it the meeting to order. So good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the March 24th, 2026 Board Work Session meeting of the Richland 2 Board of Trustees to order. The agenda for tonight's meeting has been published and made available publicly. May I please have a motion regarding the approval of the agenda? Oh, wait. You know what? Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance really quick. All right. Sorry. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Did you see it? Okay, good. All right. All right. Sorry about that, guys. All right. So now, item 3.1. The agenda for tonight's meeting has been planned and published and made available publicly. May I please have a motion regarding the approval of the agenda?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms. Williams.
I move to approve the agenda for the March 24th, 2026 Board Work Session meeting with the exception of item 8.3, Strategic Resource Alignment Update.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion has been made by Ms. Williams and seconded by Ms. Washington to approve the agenda with the exception of item, tell me that item number again? 8.3, to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion?
Just, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just a quick question what's the reasoning for removing 8.3?
Oh, because we didn't need the update, because we've had them every month, but we
Okay.
still put it on there in case we do need it. We just didn't need it for this
Okay.
time. There's not a
Thank you.
whole lot of change. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so, all right, there being no other discussion, board members, please vote. Oh, sorry, Ms. Williams, is that correct? Okay, now, board members, please vote. Sorry, that was my bad. Okay. Okay, the vote is 7 yes, 0 no. The motion passes. We will now move on to item 4.1, executive session. May I have a motion to go into executive session?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Dr. Elkin Scott.
I move to convene an executive session for the purpose of student appeals, student admission requests into the district's adult education program, employment recommendations and certified releases, personnel matter regarding support staff positions elimination, personnel matter regarding professional positions elimination, and personnel matter regarding the superintendent's evaluation goals.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion has been made by Dr. Elkin Scott and seconded by Mr. Dennis. Is there any discussion? Okay, there being no discussion, if the motion when it appears on the screen is correct, Dr. Elkin Scott, if you'll let us know, and then we will proceed after that.
If she just wants to read it back, I can. That's correct.
All right, then, if it's not working, if we could, everybody who's in favor, if you could raise your right hand, please. Okay. All those opposed? Okay, the vote is 7 yes, 0 no. The motion passes. We will now go into executive session. Okay, may I have a motion to end executive session?
Madam Chair,
Ms. Washington?
I move that we adjourn executive session at 7:22 and resume public session.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion has been made by Ms. Washington and seconded by Mr. Dennis to end executive session at 7:22 PM. Is there any discussion? All right, once that appears on the screen, Ms. Washington, if you'll just make sure that it is correct. Oh, is every Okay, if you guys will just bear with us, we're having a little bit of technical difficulty tonight, so we're going to, and if you're having trouble logging in, you may be having some trouble logging it back in too. So Ms. Tanidra, if you will read that back to us for the record. Okay, yes, and if you will get her mic, just in case we need her tonight. Okay, all right. Ms. Washington, was that correct? Did you heard it? Yes. Okay, all right. If you will please raise your right hand if you are in favor. All right, and all those opposed? Okay, the motion is 7 yes, 0 no. The motion passes. All right, we will now move on to item, oh, right, that's right. Okay, yep, item 5, the consent agenda. Item 5.1, may I please have a motion regarding the approval of the consent agenda?
Madam Chair,
Ms. Washington?
I move to approve the consent agenda for the March 24th, 2026 Board Work Session meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion has been made by Ms. Washington and seconded by Mr. Dennis. Is there any discussion? Okay, Ms. Tanidra Washington, we've got two Ms. Washingtons. Ms. Washington, Tanidra Washington, if you could read that back for the record.
Motion made by Ms. Tamika Washington to approve the consent agenda for the March 24th, 2026 Board Work Session, seconded by Mr. Gary Dennis.
Okay, we got you on the mic tonight. All right, Ms. Washington, is that as you heard it? Okay, all right. Board members, if you are all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. And then all those opposed? All right, the motion is 7 yes, 0 no. The motion passes. We will now move on to item 5.2, approval, oh, sorry, not wrong. Okay, sorry, 6.0, public participation. As I understood it, do we have public participation? There's nobody on the list, so we will now move on to item 7.0, vote on executive session items. Item 7.1, student appeals. May I please have a motion regarding student appeals?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms. Porter.
I move to approve the appeal with placement at Blythewood Academy for student number 1.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made by Ms. Porter and seconded by Mr. Trapp. Is there any discussion? Okay, Ms. Tanidra Washington, if you could read back the record for us.
Yes, ma'am. Moved by Trustee Nikki Porter to approve the appeal with placement at Blythewood Academy for student number 1, seconded by Mr. Trapp.
Okay, all right, then board members, if you will, raise your right hand. All those are in favor. All those opposed? Okay, the motion is 7 yes, 0 no. The motion passes. We will now move on to item 7.2, student admission request into the district's adult education program. May I please have a motion regarding the student admission request into the district's adult education program?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Trapp?
I move to approve the student admission request into the district's adult education program for students 1 and 2.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been made by Mr. Trapp and seconded by Ms. Porter. Is there any discussion? Okay, Ms. Tanisha Washington, if you will read back the record for us.
Yes, trustee Joe Trapp, move to approve the student admission request into the district's adult education program for students 1 and 2.
Mr. Trapp,
Seconded
is
by-
that as you heard the record? Okay. All those who are in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay. Any opposed? Okay, the motion is 7 yes, 0 no. The motion passes. Okay, we will now move on to item 7.3, employment recommendations and certified releases. May I please have a motion regarding employment recommendations and certified releases?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Dennis.
I move to approve the employment recommendations and certified releases as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion has been made by Mr. Gary Dennis and seconded by Dr. Elkin Scott. Is there any discussion? Okay, Ms. Tanisha Washington, if you could read back the record for us. Oh,
Yes.
there it is. Thank you. Thank you, team. All right. Mr. Dennis, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, after all that work, it better be. They went through a lot of trouble. All right, board members, you should be able to do your screen. Mine just came up. Let me know if it is not. But board members, if you will, please vote. Yes, we're back. Okay, the vote is 7 yes, 0 no. The motion passes. We will now move on to, let's see here, voting on executive sessions items. Item 7.4, personal matter regarding professional positions and eliminations. May I please have a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms. Washington.
I move to approve the district administration's recommendation as outlined in document 4.6.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion has been made by Ms. Washington and seconded by Ms. Porter. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I do want to share a few things. I know when we're making eliminations, that's very hard. And I know that the district have probably tried to do all that they can do. However, as a board member, I do believe that more could have been done. When we're talking about eliminating jobs, that's taking people away from a possible income that they could have had. And we know that we all live off the income and the money that we make. So it just baffles me that we're okay, because I'm going to say we're okay, because if we're not okay, our vote will show whether we are okay or not. Richland, too, is a very rich school district. Now, in any school district, you don't want to deplete your funds like at your own home. You don't want to do that. You have to plan. But I think we could have put more of an effort in the process of how we decided to eliminate some district level positions. And I think, too, out of respect, because we say we're a district of joy, family, love, support, and most importantly, a family. I don't want my family members doing me like that. I don't know about other folks. So my vote is going to reflect no support of this, because I don't think we went about it the correct way. I don't think we had enough conversations about it. And I don't think that, I think we are taking a knee-jerk position. I am not new to this. This is something, I've been on this board for 14 years. And my colleagues 4 years and 2 years. With that, we've been in this position before, and I've seen that. What I don't want to happen is that we make a vast decision and we lose very good people to a charter school, to a private school, to the State Department of Education, and then we come to our senses, because that's what I'm gonna say, we come to our senses, and then we realize we have money.
Madam
Now we
Chair,
can put those,
I'm going to raise a
that
point of
information
order
back
so
out there.
that we
And
can
see,
move
let me tell
on
you about
for
the public.
executive
Every
session items
time
being
someone tries
discussed
to
in
talk,
public.
it's always about
Madam Chair,
a
I'm going to
point
raise
of
a point
order.
of order
But
that
you
we
can
are
stop
not
me here at the mic, but you can't
discussing.
stop me outside.
Okay.
We
And
are
only,
not to
only a
discuss
coward would
what
call a
we
point of
have.
order when someone is trying to share
Dr.
with the
Elkin
public.
Scott, we
But I'm
can't-
trying to share with the
I
public
understand,
about
but we
my vote.
can't-
So no one should
But we
stop.
can't discuss
I
items that are,
understand. No,
we have
this
to be
is not
careful
executive
about.
session. This is
It
something we're
is.
getting ready to
That's
vote
the
on.
item.
We're getting ready to to vote on eliminating
Right,
positions.
so if we could just
I
keep it
did
to the
not-
comments on
right, but
that
I
and
did
not on other
say
board
which
members as
positions.
well.
So guess what? I
Okay.
am in line because I've never called a position.
Well,
I
okay.
never called a position.
But what I'm saying is
And what I'm not
also-
going to do is, the voters voted for me with the highest number of votes.
Dr. Elkin Scott, if we could just
For me to be
stick
able
to-
to speak for them.
Dr.
And I
Elkin
don't-
Scott,
I get that, Ms.
if we could just
Nash,
stick
give
to
me-
your point,
right,
please.
So just give me a second. And I'm not going to have Ms. Washington or anyone else call a point of order when I'm speaking. That's rude.
But we are trying
That
to
is
be
rude.
very careful to not.
I have not
Okay.
mentioned, Ms.
Okay.
Nash, I have
Well,
never
but if you
mentioned a
will please-
position.
You want to finish your point?
I
and-
will, but I
okay.
have, and see.
But
and
I
that's
also
the-
but just,
Right.
if you can, we don't want
Right,
to, decorum, we can't, part of
with
Robert's
all
Rules
due
of Order
respect, Ms.
is
Nash,
just, I'm just saying, is that we
Right.
don't want to say what somebody else feels or how they feel about
Listen,
the vote and what they feel,
Ms.
because
Ms.
that's
Nash,
not okay either.
I
That is a
understand, but
decorum,
if you-
point of order for
If you can
decorum.
let me finish, please.
Okay.
And I want the voters to know, too, that's the thing that you're going to learn about board members.
Okay.
They love to
Dr.
stop
Elkin
you from
Scott.
talking. But you know what? I'm going to stop
cannot
talking.
do that.
Because I'm going to talk to
Dr.
other
Elkin
people, and
Scott,
I'm going to let the
that's
voters talk
fine.
in November.
Dr. Elkin Scott,
Thank
that's
you.
fine. Okay, is there any other discussion? Because then I would like to say something if there isn't. If there, I'll let everybody else go first. Is there anybody else who has anything to say? Ms. Porter?
Yes, first off, I want to, on this matter, I know a lot of work went behind the decisions that were made, and we have been working on pieces that have brought us to this point for almost a year now, including our audit of positions, our audit of descriptions of jobs and so forth. And I want to say that I don't think anyone has taken any decision lightly, and I want to thank those on our staff who have had to make the difficult decisions and delivered difficult news, and our superintendent in collaboration with our board, because we've been with them every step of the way. And I think what this is it's emotion, because it does affect people. And I don't think anything has been taken lightly. And I just want to thank you for the work that you've done. And I know that this is difficult.
Okay. And I want to just say that we started this process, and this is for the public to hear as well. We started this process quite a long time ago with meetings. You can actually go back online and view those meetings and see the records of those. We came together here. We've done, tried to be as transparent as we possibly can within the realms of the law and policy. And we've had meetings here. Several people have sat around this table. We've sat here collectively and worked through this. And it is not easy for anybody, as you know, in the public sector and in the sector of education. And so I don't want it to be taken lightly that anybody here cares less. As a matter of fact, we care more. And that is why we have started this process, gosh, yes, quite frankly, over a year ago, in looking at this and trying to be proactive to do as much as we can to save as much as we can. And so that being said, I will now go ahead and call for the vote. Dr. Scott. Vote. Can you put that on the screen? Just make sure that is correct. Okay. Can you, do you have it on record for us to read back the record? Yes. Let's do that.
The motion was made by Ms. Tamika Washington to approve the district administration's recommendation as outlined in document 4.6, seconded by Ms. Nikki Porter.
Okay, is that correct? Did you have stated it, Ms. Washington? Okay. All right, board members, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed? Okay, the vote is 7 yes, 1 no, the motion passes. Oh, sorry, 6 yes, 1 no, the motion passes. The vote is 6 yes, 1 no, the motion passes. Did you get that, Ms. Washington? I just want to make sure that was correct. Okay, there it is, yes. All right, we will now move on to our item 8.0, which is our planning and discussion items. We are now going to enter into our board and member ethics training as a part of our new workshop model. And I'll just say, like, one of the reasons why we have begun doing that is so that, one, we can save resources with not just having a separate workshop, but being able to utilize the time that we have here together and do some of our workshop work here. So, of course, the public is always welcome to stay and be a part of that as well, but we're going to go into that item now. So item 8.1, board ethics training. This agenda item in this section is a board ethics training, and I will now introduce Andrea White, attorney from White and Story. Andrea, thank you so much for being here with us.
Now it's on. Can everybody hear me? Hi, I'm Andrea White. I'm an attorney here in Columbia, and I practice in the area of education law and have done that for almost 40 years now. Ooh, it's a long time. So what I wanted to, is that better? So what I wanted to talk to you all about this evening are the legal and ethical responsibilities of school trustees. You know, you all go to training at least when you first became board members. The School Board Association puts on training, and so many of you all, you know, went to that because you're actually required to do that. But it's good to have these workshops on a regular basis to make certain that board members understand what the ethical responsibilities are, both under your board policy as well as under state law. And then I just wanted to give you some scenarios for us to discuss about when you can find yourself in a potential ethical problem. So, what are we specifically going to talk about this evening? First thing is the South Carolina Ethics Code, which that can be found in Title 8 of the South Carolina Code of Laws. The South Carolina State Ethics Commission has a website which has on there all of the rules of conduct for elected officials. The other thing about the South Carolina Ethics Commission is you can go on their website and find opinions that they have written in, you know, response to certain questions that they get from elected officials. So it's a really good resource. You also can call the Ethics Commission and speak with the director. They also have legal counsel and ask questions before you proceed to do something that potentially might get you in trouble. So they're a great resource. And again, you can easily find their website and figure out, you know what the laws are and what opinions they've given in the past. We're going to talk about your board policies related to ethics of board members and conduct of board members, conflicts of interest. Common violations that I have seen, having worked on this for many years across the state with boards, and then the ramifications of misconduct. And so if y'all have questions as we're going through this, just raise your hand, and I'll recognize, you, and you can ask your questions. So let's talk first about the South Carolina Ethics Code. So I'm not going to go through and read you all the rules, right? That's something that you can do yourself by going and looking on the South Carolina Commission's Ethics Commission website. So I want to kind of give you a little bit of a quiz here on some of these common questions that come up related to particularly school board members, okay, as far as things that might get you in trouble with the Ethics Commission. And we'll talk about, well, what does that look like? What does it mean to be called before the Ethics Commission to answer various questions? So first of all, what are the rules that are specified in the Ethics Code of Laws for a board member who has a family member employed in the district? What does both the Code of Ethics and your board policy say about that? Does anybody know?
You have to disclose it?
Yes, you have to disclose it. If you have an immediate family member who is employed in the district, the ethics laws actually require you to disclose that to the board, and that disclosure needs to be made in writing. And then also, if you look at your board policy, it spells out how you go about the recusal process, okay? So when that gets to be important is that there is, one of the ethics laws says that you cannot gain anything personally as a result of your service in public office, okay? So you cannot use your public office for personal financial gain. And that is gain to you. That could be a monetary gain. That could be some sort of in-kind contribution. That's also anything that impacts a business with which you are associated. And also your immediate family member. They cannot gain an economic interest because you are an elected public official as a member of a school board. So it's very important to remember that and to make certain that you comply with both the disclosure and then the recusal. And for instance, if you have a family member who owns a concrete business, okay? And the board is considering hiring a company to do some concrete work on behalf of the district. You need to recuse yourself not only from voting on the awarding of a contract to the concrete company, but also recuse yourself from discussions related to that. Because if you don't, you may receive a complaint to the Ethics Commission. And anybody can call the Ethics Commission and make a complaint about an elected official. So if if you're in a situation where that might be the case, where your family member is involved with this concrete business, and if you don't disclose that relationship and you don't recuse yourself, then there may be a complaint to the Ethics Commission, which could result in what? Fines and penalties. And in fact, the ethics laws have criminal violations in there where you actually could be charged with a crime under the ethics code. Not a lot of people know that. They think about it as like penalties and fines, but there also can be criminal sanctions. So it's important to remember that. And we just had a situation recently, right, with a board member in Charleston who has been removed from office for doing what? Accepting a bribe, right, with regard to the selection of a vendor. So and the governor removed that person from office. He's facing felony charges. It's a big deal to use your official position for personal financial gain. So we also get into how board members should behave, for instance, when they're invited to dinner by a vendor who does business with the district. Okay, so this is someone who's already doing business with the district, and you as a board member or the board as a whole is invited to dinner or invited to a football game or, given tickets to some event. What are the rules there? Can a board member or the whole board go out to dinner or receive a gift from a vendor who is doing business with the district? Are you able to do that?
Yes, but you have to
Yes.
disclose it.
Yes. You are allowed to do that under the ethics rules and under your board policies, but you must disclose that. So how do you disclose that? What does that become a part of?
Your statement of economic interest.
Yep, the statement of economic interest that you file every year, you are obligated to disclose the fact that you were given a gift, right, a monetary contribution in kind through a dinner or tickets. That must be disclosed on your statement of economic interest. And if you don't do that, what can happen? Again, a complaint to the Ethics Commission and potentially, fines and penalties. And if it's bad enough, there could be criminal charges. But that changes a little bit when we look at, whoops, what did I just do, Tanidra? I hit the wrong button. There we go. So what are the rules when a board member is invited to dinner or given a gift by a prospective vendor? It's kind of a tricky answer, okay? If the board does not have an RFP or an invitation to bid that is outstanding, okay, in a particular area. Let's use, for example, accounting firms. If the board is interviewing accounting firms, normally when you hire an accounting firm, that is a special service that doesn't have to go through the invitation to bid. It may go through requests for proposals, but let's say that an accounting firm knows that the district is looking for a new accounting firm. Should you go out to dinner or accept a gift from that accounting firm? No, because that looks like what? That looks like a bribe, right? Or they're like, okay, if you will consider us, then we'll do this for you. And sometimes it's the appearance of impropriety is just as important as whether or not you actually violated the ethics code. So what I say to board members is, if you are having some firm or some organization or some individual wanting to take you out and you don't already do business with that particular vendor, but you know that y'all are considering doing that, I would stay away. I just think it's best practice to avoid that appearance of impropriety. Does anybody have any questions related to that? It's just, again, the appearance of impropriety is something that you should keep in mind. So what gifts or monetary contributions must a trustee disclose on their statement of economic interest? What does the Ethics Commission say about that?
Is it $25 or more?
It's
I do 10, but is it over 25?
It's 25 or more, but I will say this. If you go read some of the opinions that are written by the Ethics Commission, they say if it is anything that has more than a nominal value, okay, then you should disclose that. So what I advise clients who ask me about it is, if in doubt, disclose it. Not if in doubt, leave it out, right? If in doubt, disclose it. Because there is, there's nothing, even if you didn't have to disclose it, the better practice is to do that. Because otherwise, what does it look like? The appearance of impropriety. So you know how a lot of schools during Board Member Appreciation Month, they give gifts to board members? Is it okay to accept those? Absolutely. But should you disclose that on your statement of economic interest? I would. And you don't have to say mug valued at $6 or calendar valued at, just say gifts from schools related to Board Member Appreciation Month, approximate value, ballpark it, right? $100, $50, whatever it is. Yes, Monica?
Thank you for saying that, but I just had a conversation with ethics about 2 weeks ago about that same question, and they said there's no need to put a list of 15 schools or 20 schools or the value, because if you do a combination, because my question to them is, what if you did a combination of $150? And that's when they said you do not want to do that because that's over 25. So if you know your gift is under $25, you don't have to disclose it instead of doing a combination. So if
I would,
if you
and
would
again,
just go
some of
back
that
and check
depends on
that.
who you talk to at the Ethics Commission, and so
Yes.
I would err on the side of reporting it. That's an individual decision, right? I mean, each trustee fills that out, but I would err on the side of just saying, gifts from various schools, and you could even say estimated value $25 or estimated value $35, because quite frankly, I don't understand why you wouldn't just put it on there. You know what I mean? I just think it's best practice. But again, that's an individual trustee decision.
Yeah, because we definitely have had over the past gotten various different things, and I started just like putting it on there just in case. Even the other day, I got a cute little Post-it at a school visit, like a pack of Post-its, and I was like, I'm still going to put it on here just for the sake of, I just don't know. And the landscape of everything is changing so much, where there's like heavy scrutiny in general. And so I've just been kind of putting all that on there. But what she was saying about the 150 total, so or 125, whatever it is, because typically it's around that much when we've calculated. It's somewhere anywhere between like 100, 125, 150, I think, probably, during that school board appreciation week. And it comes in a big thing of like all of it. So, like you said, we should just be putting something like where it says various or breaking that up, because we don't even know sometimes if it's what schools it comes from.
Right. Yeah, I would just say gifts from schools, estimated value of whatever, because the administration probably gives you that estimated value, right, for purposes of putting it on your SEI. So that's what I would do if I had to fill out a statement of economic interest. Because again, there's a lot of scrutiny right now. I mean, with especially what happened in Charleston, I think people are looking more closely at our board members benefiting from being on the school board. Yes, Jay?
I was going to ask, when you're filling out the form, it asks you for your relationship to the giver. I don't think the word, but what is the right answer for that? If we're trusted, like for example, if a school gives us something, we don't have a relationship, just put none? I mean, obviously if it's a vendor, you would know it's a vendor, but
Yeah,
schools and
what they're
things.
looking for is, do you have any personal relationship with somebody who gives you a gift, right? Because then if you've got a lot of that going on and they're already looking at you because they've received complaints before, that's what they're looking for. So if it's the schools, I would just put no personal relationship is how I would handle that. All right. Did you have somebody have another question? Okay. All right. So that's a real brief nutshell, right, of what the ethics laws say. But the one, I just think the one that you've really got to pay attention to is don't do anything that indicates that you're using your position for personal financial gain. And most of us know that, but it's when we have like a business that we're affiliated with or a family member. Sometimes we don't always think about that. So just be careful. What about your school board policies that govern trustee conduct, right? Where do you find those? Section B of the board policy manual, and all of you should be very familiar with Section B of the policy manual. Like you should sit down and read all of those policies, and y'all have done a really good job of updating your policies recently. I think a lot of them were revised in like 2023 that I was looking at. You need to make sure that you're aware of those so you're not violating board policy. Because if you're violating board policy, not only can it result in some things that we'll talk about in a minute as far as your position on the board and so forth, but I've seen lawyers argue that school board policies create a contract between the school district and the person who is impacted by board policy. Now, how successful that would be in front of a court, I really don't know, but I've seen that argued before. So you could have somebody who says, well, the board created this policy, and now they're violating that policy. For instance, like in the student discipline area or in an area related to employees, right? So it's important that we know what policies are and that we adhere to them. So what policies in particular do I think are significant? BC, conduct of trustees, there's a lot of information in there about how you all are to conduct yourselves as school board members. BCA, the Code of Ethics, that gets into what we were talking about a minute ago with the South Carolina Ethics Code. BCB, conflicts of interest, again, kind of tracking what the ethics code says. And then also BDD, board and superintendent relationship, right? What the superintendent is supposed to be doing and what you all are supposed to be doing as board members. So those are places that tell you how you're supposed to conduct yourself as a board member. So what are some things that are particularly significant? And I just pulled these directly from your board policies, okay? The first one, trustees should work harmoniously with each other. That's important, right? Is try to get along with everyone, be polite, be respectful, let everybody have an opportunity to speak, not interrupt each other, not talk over each other. Try to work harmoniously. Even when you disagree, You should be doing that in a polite and respectful manner. And that's the case not only with each other, but with whom? With the administration, right? We should all behave ourselves as the professionals that we are. This is important. Trustees should refer complaints to the administration and refrain from personal counsel or action. So if somebody comes to you, one of your constituents, and is complaining about the principal at a particular school, or complaining about something to do with safety and security, any of those type things, is it your job to go out and investigate those things? No, that is not your job. So not only if you are taking it upon yourself to go investigate something and then tell the person, it could be an employee who comes to you and says, well, I think I'm being treated unfairly because blah, blah, blah. You know, you shouldn't go look into that and then or tell the employee, I'm going to look into that and I'm going to make it better for you. What should you do? You should take that matter to the superintendent. And I would caution you about even having conversations with employees or parents who are asking something specific from you and asking you to do something, because what's going to happen? That's going to show up on down the road that, well, I talked to Nikki Porter and she told me blah, blah, blah. So Nikki may then be in the position of having to recuse herself from being able to hear a matter and take action on a matter because she's already had that conversation. So it's important that you refer those complaints to the superintendent or her designee. It's also in her contract, right, that is what the board is to do. It's in your policy and it's in her contract. Thirdly, trustees should maintain the confidentiality of all matters discussed in executive session. You know, FOIA is what drives what can be discussed in executive session. And a large majority of that is related to what? Personnel matters, legal matters, contracts that are being discussed, right, that haven't been voted on, aren't ready to go into the public, safety and security. So all those matters can properly be discussed in executive session and should be discussed in executive session, and you as trustees should maintain the confidentiality of that. Now, let me do say this, because I get asked this a lot. Do I, as a trustee, still have the right to freedom of speech? Absolutely you do. You have a First Amendment right to freedom of speech. However, when you become a board member and you take an oath as a board member and you agree to comply with the policies that have been set in place, that really, there are parameters then, parameters that you've accepted by running for public office, parameters on how, when, and why you can exercise that First Amendment right to freedom of speech. And of course, if you're out there speaking on something that is something that's discussed in executive session, what can happen? Any one of a number of things, right, depending upon what it is you're talking about. Did you have a question, Monica?
Well, I was going to wait until you finish, and I don't have a question, but I'm glad that you mentioned this because we had ethics training probably maybe 2 years ago, and the attorney was Jay, and I can't think of Jay's last name.
Jay Bender, maybe?
Yes, and Jay Bender said just the opposite of what you said about executive session, that it's not confidential and that you can share that, because we had a previous board member who did that. So I was very curious and waiting to see, because it depends on the attorney what you get. It's almost like research. If you wanted to work in your favor, you get that attorney. If you wanted to work in another favor, you get the other attorney.
Let me speak to that. Jay Bender is the attorney for the State Media Association, and so he advises media outlets on when he thinks, in his opinion, that a school board has violated the rules of FOIA, okay? And I'm not saying he didn't say that, because he very well may have said that. What Jay usually focuses on is when board members discuss things in executive session that are not proper for executive session, or you're in executive session talking about something that's on the agenda and you get away from that and start talking about something else that's not proper for executive session. So is there a law anywhere that says everything that is discussed in executive session is confidential, and if you release something, you violated this law? No, there is not. There's not a law that says that. The problem is, and you see where I say trustees should maintain confidentiality. There's not a law that says that, but if it is violated, there are consequences, right, that can occur depending upon how you have violated that confidentiality, okay? So again, there's no law that says that. Could things come out, let's say if there is a lawsuit and there is a subpoena for, if let's say notes were taken in an executive session and there is a subpoena for notes that were taken during the executive session, there are courts, lawyers have argued we shouldn't have to turn that information over because executive session is confidential. And what some judges, there's been no decision by a South Carolina appellate court, but what some judges have said is that even though executive session, things can be discussed there, they're still subject to being turned over during discovery and litigation. Okay, so it's really a fine point and kind of a difficult point to understand what the nuances are with if you violate executive session. No, you're not going to FOIA jail, right? But there are things that can happen. Yeah, Jay and I, we've had lots of discussions about FOIA. Yes, Nikki?
I think it's important to also look at what the consequences are to your school district.
Yes.
Because this is the district that we serve. And so there have been instances where something is said publicly that had something to do with something that was discussed during executive session, and that may be something that's used in a lawsuit. And now based on your public statement, it's now used against the school district, and that hurts the school district in their case.
Yes, it does. And not only so in a situation like that, what could happen is that you all have insurance to cover lawsuits, right? I mean, you've got general liability insurance. If y'all are sued over something and a board member is out and you get an update, right, from whoever's handling the suit, and you get an update in executive session because legal matters and the district's position in legal matters is proper for executive session, a board member goes out and says, well, I heard about, and is talking with someone and says, yes, I heard about this case, and, I think the district was wrong, and here's what I think they did wrong. Where's that information going to go? It's going to go straight to the attorney for the person who's suing the school district. That's where it's likely to end up. And so what is that going to do? It's going to compromise the district's legal position in the litigation. So worst case scenario, the case may have to be settled when it's a case that the district could have successfully defended. So what does that do? It does two things. First of all, it's going to raise your premiums. Y'all pay premiums based on your loss record, right? How much is paid out. The second thing that it can do is your insurance company, and this is the case whether you've got the school board's insurance trust or Liberty or any of the companies, they have something in their policy that says if board members do something that adversely impacts the district's position in litigation, what can the insurance company do? They can drop you, and they can say, y'all are on your own, and then who's paying the lawyers? It's coming out of your general fund, right? And so that is then adversely impacting the school district. So you got to be really careful. Again, there's no law that says it has to be confidential, but there are ramifications and there are potential consequences for trustees individually. So another one, this is straight out of policy. Trustees should communicate with staff only through the superintendent or her designee, which means what? You don't go call the principal of, Bookman Road and say, let me have a discussion with you about what I'm hearing in the community about your school. That is not what you do. You have the conversation with who? The superintendent. You ask the superintendent to look into it and report back to you. But you all should not be having those conversations with staff. Again, that can come back to bite you if on down the road that staff member, for whatever reason that you've had that conversation with, comes before the board and they're going to be pointing at you and saying, well, this board member told me blah, 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 and then what? You may need to recuse yourself, and if you don't, what could happen? Again, a complaint to the Ethics Commission, especially if there's some financial tie to that person, either your tie or your family member's tie or a business's tie. And then this, just because I always feel the need to say this, I mean, trustees should remember that the first and greatest concern must be in the educational welfare of all students attending public schools, right? I really think that ought to be something that boards should have in their boardroom, right? We have to keep that in mind. And yes, school districts do a lot more for the community. I mean, I think, Monica was saying earlier, we care about our staff. We obviously care about our staff, but students are our number one priority. And, I've said before, school districts are not employment agencies, right? That's not, we want to employ the best and the brightest people, but we do that because we care about our kids. That is our mission. All right, common violations of law and policy. All right. A trustee shares personal information about an employee that is potentially defamatory. Where would that come out of? Executive session, okay? So for instance, if the superintendent or human resources or the district's legal counsel shares in executive session a situation involving an employee, let's say if an employee is accused of sexually harassing a student, right? And the superintendent says, look, I'm investigating that. I really can't share anything more with you right now because this matter may become before the board if we determine that it's accurate and the person is terminated. And then that trustee takes that information, goes out in the community and says, well, let me tell you what I heard about Mr. So-and-so, okay? And then later on, it turns out that it was not a thing, right? It was not a sexual advance or a sexual assault. It was, something else. What can that teacher do? Sue that board member. They can sue the school district, but they can also sue the board member individually for what? Defamation. Defamation is saying something about someone to a third party that is untrue. Okay, and that can end up in court, and the board member is going to be doing what? If the board member is sued in their individual capacity, and they made that comment, then the insurance company may say what? I'm sorry, we're not giving you a lawyer. You're going to have to hire an attorney to defend yourself. And then if there is any kind of settlement or any kind of jury verdict, you're paying it, not not the school district. So that's another reason to maintain the confidentiality of things that are discussed in executive session. What about this? A trustee calls a meeting with teachers to discuss salary schedules. Is that appropriate? No. Why is that not appropriate? Because those conversations should go through the administration. A board member should not be out there taking it upon him or herself to have a meeting with teachers really to talk about anything. Unless what? The superintendent says, I'd like for board members to come to this meeting to share this information. You have to be careful about what you do outside of board meetings. You don't have any power outside of a board meeting, right? As an individual board member, you have no authority. The only authority that you have to act is when you are in here, seated in your seat during a board meeting. So again, that's something to stay away from. Yes.
I do have a comment about that because I know that board members do have town hall meetings, and some have it at their homes, and some have it out in the public. So how does that
When you say
like they
town
might
hall
call a few
meetings,
people over just to discuss board matters or politics or whatever at their home, or
are you talking about employees of the district coming over, or are you just talking about other elected officials?
other elected officials or constituents. And I will say this, that many years ago, when I first got on the board, twice a year, I used to have town halls. And guess what, everybody who's listening? I'm about to start back, because that is legal. It is legal that as long as you are not sharing confidential, as you guys say, information, you can give updates and share things with parents, such as things like this, or any concerns or matters that they have, and then you can take that back to your district. And how I know is because serving on the board for such a long time as I have been to many national conferences, many local conferences, and also the South Carolina School Board Association conferences. And they encourage you to meet frequently with your constituents. So that is in order of what a board member should do. Now, not the ones that want to do it only when it's time for a re-election, but just to keep your constituents informed of what's going on.
I think that can certainly be a beneficial process, particularly if you're going to talk about issues that the school district is grappling with, okay? I think where you start to cross the line, right, based on what policy says, is if you are having employees of the school district over to discuss specific things related to, for instance, conditions in their classroom or conditions in the school. That's a whole different thing, right? And that's what I'm advising not to do. But in terms of having just meetings to talk about issues, whether you do that at your house, you do it at a church, whatever, yes, you can do that. What I would say is that when you speak out, or when you have a meeting where it's just you and your constituents or whoever you decide to invite, whoever shows up, it's important to note that any conversations that you have about what you might think or what you might wish for the board to do, that's your personal opinion, right, as opposed to the opinion of the entire board. So again, just something to keep
Absolutely,
in
and
mind.
thank you for saying that, because I think that's when we've been taught to say, I'm not speaking on behalf of the school board, I'm speaking on behalf of Dr. Monica Scott, and then you can share those things. And just to remember that many of our constituents are employees also, because we
Right.
represent Richland too, and many of our constituents may
And I
work
think
in the district.
you've got to use good judgment. That's what it
Absolutely.
comes down to. And again, the appearance of impropriety and good judgment and common sense, right, is what everybody needs to exercise.
And then I just want to say, if they bring you cupcakes or anything, make sure you put it on your economic statement of interest.
All right, what about this one? A trustee talks with a potential vendor to share information about an upcoming request for proposals or invitation to bid, and encourages the administration to select that vendor. Is that a problem? Yes. Why is that a problem?
Because we're not part of procurement?
Right. Again, going back to the situation in Charleston, it was a little more egregious than this, but this is pretty egregious too. Y'all have a procurement code, right? And there is a process that must be followed with regard to that procurement code. And if the procurement code is not followed, if there's some runaround with the procurement code or some pressure that is being put on the superintendent or members of the procurement review panel, for example, by a board member, what can happen? First of all, depending on if the board member is going to get some kind of monetary gain from a particular vendor, right, that's a problem. Okay, because you're getting a bribe or a kickback even if it's not a company with which you're associated, right? You may be getting some kickback, and that's a violation of law as well as a violation of the Ethics Act. But the other practical thing here is that if a vendor is not selected for a particular thing, right? They're not the ones who were chosen to provide paper plates or whatever it is, then what can they do? They can file a protest, a bid protest. And what are they going to do in that bid protest? They're going to say, I heard that this trustee was talking with this vendor and told the administration that's who they needed to hire. They weren't the most responsive and responsible bidder, but yet they got the bid. And so that can create all kinds of, there's a state procurement office, they can come in. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can happen with that. So don't do it, right? All right, what can occur if a trustee violates law or policy? All right, here, we've talked about some of these, but there are things I want to mention in a little bit more detail. Potential legal claims. This would be not only against the district and the board, but it also could be against individual board members. Y'all can be sued in your personal or individual capacity as well as in your official capacity. Generally speaking, you have, and this is actually on the next slide, but well, let's cover the other three and then we'll talk about this. So ethics violations, we talked about that. Fines, reimbursement, right? If you improperly accepted something, criminal charges if it's bad enough. Action by the board. What can the board do as far as if a board member, let's say they've got a bunch of ethics fines because they didn't turn in their statement of economic interest or there's been complaints about other things, what can the board do? The board can sanction that trustee. That can either be a private conversation or it can actually be a motion by the board to sanction a particular member for certain conduct. The board could remove a trustee from offices, like if they serve as vice chair or chair, they can be removed. They can be removed from committees. And this, again, is all spelled out in your board policies in Section B. You've got a whole policy that deals with if you get a complaint against a trustee, how that should be handled, or if you've got concerns about a trustee. So, can a trustee, we talked a little bit about, I keep walking away from the microphone, sorry. We talked a little bit about individual liability of a trustee. So y'all have immunity, generally speaking. And what does that mean? Does anybody know what that means? You always hear that, we're immune, okay? What that means, go ahead, Angela.
I know it says we're immune, but are we really immune? It just means that, like, ideally, that we're kind of like in a bubble, and there's not so many things that can happen to us. But I also, in the real world, feel like there's still a lot of things that can happen to you if you make a mistake or if you inadvertently say something that's wrong. For general purposes, you should be covered, but that's
The
not.
general principle behind it is that so long as you are acting in accordance with the duties and responsibilities of your position as a trustee, okay? So you are adhering to policy, you're adhering to the ethics laws, you're adhering to anything else that's applicable to your service as a trustee, and you're acting in good faith, okay? Then you are immune from even being sued, which doesn't mean you can't be sued, but you would be dismissed from the lawsuit, okay? When can you lose that immunity? When you go outside of policy and you intentionally, so if you do something inadvertently, right, that's one thing. And the district's insurer is going to represent you, and they are going to cover any sort of settlement or any sort of verdict that might be rendered, even if it's against you in your capacity, your individual capacity. You were sued in your individual capacity because you were acting in good faith, even though you did something negligent. So it's really when you do something with malice or with intent to harm, or what you do is so careless, like the legal phrase is wanton indifference, right? Like you don't care what you say, you don't care how it impacts somebody else, you say it anyway. That's when you can lose immunity, okay? So it's important, and when saying I didn't know is not a good excuse, right? Because you are expected to know what the laws are that pertain to you as a trustee, okay? So that's why we do workshops like this. So you've been told what it is you're supposed to do and what it is you're not supposed to do. For example, if you, let's use the example of something that would be defamatory, and it wasn't that you negligently said something about somebody. Like, for instance, you hear in executive session, the superintendent shares with you some information about a principal. And and that she doesn't think the principal is doing a good job, and here's the reasons why. And then you go out, you don't like that principal anyway. You've never liked that principal. And so then you go out and you share all that information, and you actually embellish it. And, you say, well, not only is the principal bad in this way, I know that she's also done these things. And it comes out that you've never liked this principal. Perhaps there was some personal relationship that went wrong. That's wanton indifference. Like, you don't care if you're out there spreading rumors, right? So you're not necessarily doing it maliciously, but you're acting with indifference as to what might happen. Again, use common sense and good judgment, and that's why I stress the importance of the confidentiality of executive session, because I don't want any one of you to be the person who loses your immunity. You got to go get your own lawyer, pay for your own lawyer, and then you may end up losing your house. It doesn't happen that often with trustees, but you never know, if somebody loses their job as the result of something that you've said, then they may be so inclined to sue you and sue the district. And so finally, and I think this is an important question, why should the board, if you've got a trustee who is doing that, going out and spreading rumors about the principal, or doing something else that is harming the ability of the district to protect itself legally, should the board respond to that? By doing training and having conversations to make certain that every trustee understands what their role is and what they're supposed to be doing. And then if that doesn't solve the problem, that's why the board has the option of sanctioning a board member or removing them from office, to show that if the board is sued and the individual board, and they're sued because of the individual board member's conduct that results in something, the board can say, wait a minute, here's what we did as a board to make sure that all of our trustees were informed about their duties and responsibilities. So we shouldn't be held liable as a board for the actions of this one board member, because we separated ourselves legally to the extent that we're able to do so. Y'all can't remove a trustee from office. There's a state statute that's really old that's out there that says that a board can do that. I think that violates the Voting Rights Act. So when I'm asked about that, I tell boards, no, you can't remove a trustee. Only the governor can do that, or the electors at the next election, right? But it may be important and necessary at some point to separate yourself so that the board is protected. So, well, hopefully I didn't talk too long.
But just because, one, it's great for people who are online to hear as well. We're coming up to election season, so this is a great, training for anybody who's thinking about running for office. But can you talk a little bit about, and just briefly as much as you want to, but how you handle donations for elections? Meaning, how do you handle donations for, during, if you were running for office, basically?
Well, of course, you have to disclose donations that you receive. I would be cautious about who you accept donations from. Again, if you've been on the board and you're running again, and it's a vendor or a potential vendor, again, use good judgment with that. The other thing is you need to go read the board policy, and I want to say this is probably in maybe C section or D section about political activities in the schools and what you can do and you can't do as far as like placing signs and those kinds of things, and not using district equipment in your campaign. But again, with donations, I would just, again, appearance of impropriety, right? What does this look like? But you have to disclose, all of your donations. Did you have a more specific, did that answer your question?
No, that was it. Just like mainly like, using good judgments. I know there are a lot of people watching or will
Yep.
be watching, and, if you're considering it, that is something to just be aware of.
Yeah, just to keep in
This-
mind.
I would rewatch this whole entire training. So thank you
Yep.
for that.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. Okay, we will now, thank you again, Andrea, for coming and doing that for us. We are now up to date for the year. Let's see here. Okay, we will now go to item 8.2, proposed calendar 2027-2028 school year. This agenda item in this section is for the proposed calendar for 2027-2028 school year. I can't even believe we're talking about that, but Dr. Marshalyn Franklin, Deputy Superintendent, to present to the board. Come on down.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, members of the board, District Administration presents an academic calendar for the 27-28 school year. Are you controlling for me, Matthew, or am I? All right, and so this slide includes the names of individuals who served on the district calendar committee. Now, I had a pretty good represented group here, but as Timothy Wright says, the night is growing late and the sun is going down, and so I'm down to two. So you all will stand to be acknowledged. Have two remaining. Thank you so much.
We are so sorry. Thank y'all for being here.
And the only difference in the composition of the calendar committee is that we included principals this year, one each from elementary, middle, and high. That came as a recommendation from teachers. On our next slide, and in the interest of time, I will go through these kind of quickly. The calendar criteria, which has not changed, that's the same as it's been the past couple of years. The committee members use that information to develop their draft calendars. The calendar development process this year is the same as what we've used last year. Members of the committee developed 10 calendars. You can go ahead, Matthew, in advance. They developed 10 calendars. We went through a process of giving each other feedback on the calendars that were developed, narrowed them down to 5. Those 5 calendars were shared with members of our advisory groups for feedback. The calendar committee took that feedback, made some adjustments to a few calendars, and then narrowed the pool down to 2 calendars. I will acknowledge that those 2 calendars were very similar in terms of the days that students would be out. However, it did answer the long time question of preference in terms of spring break. Do you want it before Easter or after Easter? And so our guest presenter tonight is Miss Antonetta Rogers. She's a teacher at Richland Northeast High School. Her calendar was the preferred calendar that was selected by those who participated in the voting process. And she's going to come, keep advancing, Matthew. She's going to come and share some features of her calendar. What Matthew is showing now is just outcome of the vote. This particular slide includes the outcome of the vote by group. The 3 groups are employees, parents, and then those individuals who are parents and employees. And so Ms. Rogers is going to come and share with you some of the features of the calendar that she created, and this is the calendar that we present to to the board for consideration.
Good evening. I'm pleased to share about 4 key highlights from the Option B 2027-2028 calendar, developed in collaboration with the District Calendar Committee and informed by multiple perspectives. So to begin, teachers will return on Tuesday, July 27th, with students returning on Wednesday, August 4th, allowing 6 days for preparation, professional development, and collaboration before the start of the school year. Another key feature is the structure following each 45-day quarter, where students receive an extended weekend with Friday and Monday as school holidays. Fridays will be teacher workdays. This is important because it provides dedicated time for planning, grading, and professional development, as well as time in professional learning communities, while allowing time for students and teachers to rest, recharge, and just to support our overall academic success. Following winter break, teachers return for a work day on Tuesday, with students returning on Wednesday to ensure a smooth transition into the second semester. Our next key feature will be the President's Day holiday. Instead of just one day, we decided to go with 2 days to help us with the long stretch between February and March. The calendar schedules spring break immediately following Easter with the Friday before beginning the break. This placement generated varied perspectives among stakeholders. Like Dr. Franklin stated, some prefer spring break to occur earlier, before Easter, while others favor the traditional timing immediately after the holiday. So overall, option B reflects a thoughtful balance between instructional time, staff preparation, and student well-being. It incorporates strategic breaks and planning opportunities that support both academic success and organizational effectiveness. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. That concludes the presentation of the proposed calendar for 27-28, Madam Chair.
Okay, she was very confident. She came up here like, B is it. Thank you for your hard work. Okay, we will now move on to item 8.3, policy revision proposal, policy IKF, graduation requirements. This agenda item in this section is a policy revision proposal to policy IKF, graduation requirements. Dr. Moore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to ask that Ms. Jennifer Morrison, our Senior Chief of Academic Officer, come to present to the board. And since we're speaking of graduation, it is quickly upon us. So we are in that celebration season right now. And I'll turn it over to Ms. Morrison.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so I know we are late in the evening, and but that said, I want to thank Dr. Jerome Davis, who's here with me and might help answer any questions that you all have. One thing that I think that you'll notice with the revisions to policy IKF is that it really, the need for the revisions actually shows what a leader in the state Richland 2 actually is. And so we're bringing policy IKF graduation requirements to you this evening with 2 recommended changes. The first has to do with the career prep program. So we're asking that you remove language related to the district's career prep program, which was put in place in 1999, 27 years ago, with the intent to provide students who may not earn the South Carolina high school diploma with opportunities to increase their job readiness and workforce skills. We were ahead of the wave in Richland 2. In the meantime, that program was put in place well before South Carolina had clarity as a state and defined for the public what it means to be career ready. So it was well prior to that. But in the meantime, what's happened over the last 20 years or so is that enrollment in the program has declined significantly. And in spring of 2025, only 2 students earned the district career prep certificate. Only 19 students from all high schools right now are enrolled in the special program. And only 3 of our 5 high schools have active programs with those 19 students. And we also know that given everything that's happened with state requirements around career preparation and career readiness, that career prep actually duplicates some of the opportunities, resources, and supports currently in place already at each of our high schools. And we now have very clear state guidelines and pathways. So right now we know that duplication is there. Every high school has a work-based learning coordinator. Every high school has career readiness assessment preparation resources that are provided by the Department of Education. Every high school has a career development facilitator. We have counselors who understand career development, and we have career-related resources in each building. So closing the program in terms of cost savings, will remove the cost of any special staffing needed for that in schools at this time. But most of the schools have already rolled those positions into their staffing guidelines. So there's no longer a special career prep teacher there. Our current intent is actually to widen opportunities for each and every student in our high schools. So if for some reason a student will not graduate with a diploma, we want to work to make sure that that student has a pathway to a recognized state credential, which exists now but did not exist when this program was first put in place. So that recognized state credential may have to do with work-based learning, being a CTE completer, earning a national or state industry credential, earning a passing score on the state readiness assessment, or even a passing score on the ASVAB or adult education. We have lots of options for all students here in the district. So however, before we start working with high schools around clarity for all of those students, in working with high schools, counselors, and other staff on this widened pathway, we need the board to remove the duplicated career prep program from policy so we can go ahead and not necessarily enroll students in a special program when all of those things are available to all of our students. So please know that we are actually going to work with the current 19 students in the program to finish out the program and make sure they're able to do that with the support of 2 existing job coaches at the district level. Any questions about the career prep program?
Any questions? Okay, Dr.
Madam
Elkins
Chair,
Scott.
I guess I'm sitting here in shock because I know how important the career prep program is, and I've done a lot of work. And when I think about, and you guys can look around and smile at each other, you don't have the experience or the background, so you don't understand what I'm talking about. But to just dissolve that, and for the board to hear this for the very first time, that's just appalling to me. And it just goes back again to what I said about putting things out in the public before you even share with the board. I mean, I would have suggested that even the board go, because probably half of them or more may not even be familiar with what they have done or do with a career prep program. I've been involved with that for a long time, even when I worked in the schools. And I know the magnitude and the skill set, the lower level skill set of those students. And with the extra things that those teachers or the person who was actually, Sussman, as a matter of fact, who was actually over that program that could provide those resources for those students to make sure that they were career ready to find those employment for those students with voc rehab and some of the other alternative programs that I know that will be very difficult for workforce development because they don't have the skill set. They're normally working with our students that's on a high school track, as well as our students who are considering a 2-year and 4-year college. So I would like to have more of a discussion, maybe later, or something sent in board docs, because it's just appalling to me, again, that we hear something for the very first time without any conversation from the superintendent or any conversation in executive session about eliminating this program. And again, before somebody call a point of order on me, let me just say this. We keep saying we're a family and we care about all of our students. That's a completely different population. So what's going to happen to those students? And it's a small population. You know, at one point it was like 7 or 8 kids, but they were the cohort. And then they had that person that followed them to academics, followed them to the workplace to show them and help them fold clothes, or to show them how to shred paper, or to help them with writing their names. But they always treated them like family and made sure that they had some type of employment, because once they left us, if we didn't find that employment for them, it was very difficult for them and their parents to go out to secure that. So I do want to have more conversations. And then I'm going to say this, and not so much to you, but to Dr. Moore. Please don't give us any surprises, because this is something we really should have talked about. Even if we didn't talk about it, had more conversation. Thank you.
Ms. Porter?
Yeah, I just wanted a few things. So we're going to see quite a few policies come before us to vote. And in the manner in which we're doing it is through our committees. This is going to feel different and look different because we have not utilized our committees the way that we are doing now in the past couple of years, okay? So the results of Dr. Scott's committee, the academic committee, the safety committee, and facilities are going to bring about policies where the discussion has already taken place. They're recorded and streamed online for you to go back and review. And then through the committees, we're somewhat fast-tracking them so that our board colleagues know that we've already asked all of the questions, and now it's at the point where it's ready to be brought before the board. And so, for example, this policy, as Dr. Morrison mentioned, but I think it's very important for me to highlight, is that students involved in this program, where it was purposeful 20 years ago, the result, because of how much has changed, they're getting an empty promise from us. We have replaced that program with programs where students can finish the program and leave with a certificate that actually applies to the workplace. That, excuse me? Like a high school credential, yes, an actual observed certificate by our state. The program in the past is no longer observed by our state. So things have changed. And so instead of giving them a certificate that they cannot use, we're giving them a credential that they can use in the actual workplace, one that actually works for them. And so for the students who are still involved, we've actually already gone through that process. I've talked to Dr. Morrison about it, and that was that the students who are still involved, they're not getting left to the wayside. They get to continue the program and finish with it, but that certificate is not, it won't work for them because it's not recognized by our state. But what we will put in place is we will utilize funding that will actually give them something that they can use, and it's recognized by our state.
Ms. Williams?
Yes, and then just for clarity, it is true that these programs such as Project Search and Voc Rehab will now go back to the schools to be able for students to participate in those same programs.
So I'm going to make sure that we have a conversation about the specific programs and how those play into things. One of the things, the topic of the academics committee meeting this week is actually these pathways that we're talking about for students who are earning a diploma or not. And I think we can make sure we can answer questions about the specific programs, how those will transfer, the 19 students that we're talking about, and also what it means and what it will look like. And we could, as a result of that committee meeting, put some information into the board brief for everyone to see, some good detailed information. That's what we'll probably work toward for that, so everybody can see it.
Thank you.
And just want to say, thank you all, and just bear with us in this process. We are trying to streamline a lot of work, but I do encourage board members to watch those meetings. I know Mr. Trapp, looked in on safety and security, and if you have questions, because we are talking about these things and putting them in the board brief so people will know, and we definitely want feedback from the board. And you definitely, I've had some committee members ask me about feedback. Some people, have suggested feedback, and so definitely being involved. But what we're trying to do is really give our students the best and give our time as much as we can to streamlining processes. And again, things have changed. The world's changed in the last 10 minutes. 1 minute we were doing ChatGPT, now we're doing Claude. That's how fast it's changing. And so we're just trying to be cutting edge and change with it. All right, well,
And
I guess,
then can I just
sure.
finish up the other change? There's a second change to.
Oh, yes, sorry,
I knew we wanted
thank you.
to talk about one and then probably talk about the other to
Yeah.
make sure everybody has the opportunity to process.
To digest, yes, we like that.
So also in IKF, you will notice that we are proposing striking the language related to the transition certificate program, but we are replacing that with language related to the South Carolina employability credential, which is relatively new in the state. It's pretty well developed by this point. It's been around for a little bit over, I would say 5-6 years now. And but we're asking that the board replace that language related to the district transition certificate program with what is offered and recognized by the state, which is the South Carolina High School school employability credential. You can go to the Department of Education website and see that. It's not a diploma, and we always have to be really careful when we use terms like diploma, certification, credential, all of those different kinds of things. This is not a diploma. It is a state-recognized credential for qualifying special education students as part of their IEPs. The state credentials courses, portfolio requirements, and work-based learning requirements are clear and available on the Department of Education website, including very, very specific course outlines and that kind of thing. We know that our South Carolina high school employability credential resources are already in place and already being used. We want more students to be along that track. I think last year we had 11 finishers for the employability credential. It should be a lot more than that. And so we're working towards that goal. So our goal with both the changes, it was really it really does show that Richland 2 has been at the forefront for a good long time. The fact that the state is now sort of caught up with what Richland 2 has been doing. So our goal with both of those changes is to ensure that our students are earning recognized state credentials. And we know that a state recognized credential carries fundamentally different value than maybe just a district provided certificate, because it signals that external validation and credibility beyond the local system. So I think that distinction matters for students' post-secondary access and long-term mobility, but like Dr. Scott has pointed out, we want to make sure that we take care of our students who are involved in all of our programs along the way. Any other questions?
Ms. Porter?
One more thing, a great positive win out of this. The employability credential discussion has gone to South Carolina School Boards Association, working with the State Department, and that possibly being something being changed with our school report cards.
Oh, cool.
Because, as you know, we've had discussions about that population, possibly making it so that a school would not meet a certain rating with the report cards, but now they're going to recognize, or at least the discussion right now is that they would recognize the South Carolina employability credential and have that add towards the school's report card. So we're cheering that on and encouraging that to get passed.
Dr. Moore?
I just wanted to add, we're very appreciative of the committee's work because that is important, what Ms. Williams just talked about. And our goal is to ensure that our students, no matter what that student has, if they have a disability, if they don't have a disability, that they're ready when they graduate from our schools or leave us, they are ready to enter into the workforce. And so this change, we believe, will help better prepare our students. I'm grateful for the work of the committees because each of the committees has brought different things to the board at the time of the board meeting and not before, sometimes not before the board. So we made changes to, for example, out of Dr. Scott's committee around placement of students. That was discussed. This is the first reading of the policy, the potential changes to the policy. So we are very open to any feedback and recommendations that have to be, that are offered. But I will say this, I do believe that this will set our students up for success. And I appreciate Ms. Williams and Ms. Porter's work on this just as much as I appreciate Mr. Dennis on his legislative work, Mr. Trapp on his operations, Ms. Porter on safety and security, Dr. Scott on alternative pathways, and Ms. Washington on policy. Thank you.
And I'm just a chump over here. I'm just kidding.
You and I are together.
No, but thank you. I appreciate all the work that everybody's done. Again, it's been, I know that it's tiring, but I appreciate everything that you guys have been doing. And so with that, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Moore. Oh, yes, sorry, Mr.
I got
Dennis.
something on this. I did not know, I was looking into it, and I did not know that the program was not recognized by the state anymore. I was kind of seeing that, but I'm glad you pointed that out because that was going to be one of my questions tonight. But I will say, these programs, I'm really concerned with our non-college bound students. I know the state has done some things for them, but if we can continue to look forward into the future and mold the state to find better avenues for those students as well, I would be all in with that. I think that's something that we got to look forward to drive the state to re-envision some of their ideas. So thank you for all the hard work done for that. Thank you.
All right, it's been a long night. I don't know if we've been here this long in a while, but I appreciate y'all for sticking with us. Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn, somebody?
Madam Chair,
Ms. Washington.
if there be no further business, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very much. Meeting is adjourned.